Hello, anyone, I suppose, and welcome to the Roach Crossing weekly general live stream June 9th. I realized when I sat down the computer to start the stream that last week I didn't actually preset a stream for this week. So my apologies to anybody who may not have realized that there's going to be a live stream this week due to that. Hello Tennyson. There will be a live stream next week on June 16th. However, the following week I will not be streaming. I will be on staycation, which I will probably talk more about in a bit, and I will probably add something to the Roach Crossing page very shortly to indicate. I think I noted it in one of my blogs, but I didn't straight up say it somewhere. So I'm gonna I'll do that right now. Update the Roach Crossing homepage while also setting up a stream for next week. Let's see. 1 week from now is no. Don't want to turn on whatever that thing was. June 16th, 2022. We are about to be into summer proper very soon. Yeah, just give me one moment to get all the stuff set up for next week's live stream, and probably should say that there won't be a stream the following week in case anybody just double clicked on this and heard myself talking, got a little spooked. Let's see, just started 112 seconds ago, really. June 16th. So I won't have to do it at the end of the stream, and some people can start to trickle in. Definitely not a strictly kids content live stream either. June 16th, 7 p.m. All right. That should do it for next week's live stream. Probably note on the website that I won't be doing the live stream the following week too. All right, let me get caught up on chat already here. Alex, Porcellianitis prunosus, orange cream, a cross between powder orange and Oreo crumble. The prunosis that I received were called cookies and cream. They came from John Apple. I would imagine they're probably the same as Oreo crumble, but then again, different strains get named and made of different things. So I've been keeping the name that was associated with them when he gave them or sold them to me. But yes, it was a cross of that strain with the oranges, and then selected for both homozygous recessives. Hello, Chain. Hello, TJ. Good to see you. The cancel stream is a day after your birthday. Oh, that's unfortunate, but I'll tell a story shortly of why I did bring up that I was gonna be on vacation on a blog, but I'll bring up more evidence as to why I kind of need that. TJ says, my first Rhabdoblata parvula matured today, and I'm so excited for these to breed. Such a pretty species. I'll have to go to your blog and look up the parvula, TJ. I've been quite. I don't think I see. I'm sure you'll post a blog post with the picture of the adult male when you have the time. Hello, Alan. Are you waiting for Kai's on his way to you right now? I think, Alan. I think so. My car thing should also be in. It was either Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, sometime next week. All parts and tires and all this crap's all backlogged with the current state of the world. And don't mind me, just gonna drink some milk out of the carton. Can't remember if I had any food. I know I had some little ravioli thingies. let's see, any important news other than the stuff about the not having a live stream and whatnot. Florida trip I brought up last week. Last week things were kind of awful. uh, if I remember, was that my Sad Boys stream where I had a lot going on and my parents were suffering and it felt like everybody around me was suffering too. Hello, some eggs. Good to see you again at the start of a stream. Let me think if there's anything. I have a blog post going up tomorrow on. I do sort of cheat and give some additional information here before actual posts and stuff go up. With the busyness and turning of the gears, I've had a difficult time thinking of things to put on the blog post, because during the winter time when I have more free time and whatnot, I just sort of like, oh, I got this cool new bug. I'll just throw up a thing about it. Or, oh, this project proved out. And right now it's been more like get work done, get work done, get work done. Of course, some nifty things have come in, like the stuff from TJ and what else? The thing I was going to talk about was I was it last stream or the stream before? I know I mentioned different carry-on beetles on stream relatively recently, but I received some Necrophila americana and ended up washing them off to get the mites off. I only found one mite per adult beetle. I only received 4 beetles, which is fine. But the washing was too much for one of the females, and I think it died. But it's still twitching. It's been about 12-ish hours, so I'm kind of losing hope. But since I didn't want to put 2 males and 1 female, I just left the other male with her, and he started mounting the I guess it's not really a corpse per se, but he started mounting the female, and might still be mounting her currently. So I found that kind of morbidly funny. So I wrote a little blog on that. That should go up tomorrow. Tennyson, I bred Gunlocki before a long time ago. I currently have another subspecies of Arboreus that's doing quite well for me. I don't think they're identified. I think Alan and I maybe thought they might be crew guy, maybe. But pretty easy, good ventilation, lots of organic matter. Should be pretty straightforward. I would like to get some again, or just at all, but the pricing on unsexed and whatnot is just too ridiculous. And somebody that I was talking to that supposedly had some available, I'm no longer talking to for a number of reasons. So that's probably very unlikely there too. So, but eventually somebody else will pop up with them by some means or another, and then I'll probably swap them or purchase some. So, yeah, I can't really justify spending $70 to $100 on a smaller than a dime size millipede, especially one that reproduces pretty consistently and is semi regularly available. Maybe for some larger ones, but I mean, even at that size, a gigas or a was it Spiropius or Spirostreptus at a dime size is like, that would be, or like a nickel size is a very very convenient size to get a lot of things at, and the prices usually make sense because they've been able to get some size on them, and they're not just gonna drop dead or something like that. And also shipping too. I have no idea how Anadanopolis ship, if they were, because I haven't sent a lot of them out. I lost my colony of Gunlocki, and that was probably due to lack of ventilation and declining substrate, which is food quality. I have no doubt that they would do well for me currently because the other subspecies is doing excellent. Um, so, but they're not something like Brachycybia are actually surprisingly good shipping millipedes. They do very well under a number of different conditions, and Chicobulus, but a lot of people don't know how to ship bugs, so that's another issue. So anyways, yeah, the Necrophila, I currently have the pair that recovered, and I put them on a well, it wasn't dead when I before I gave it to them, but on a mouse, and hopefully the female will lay some eggs, and I can pull the eggs out and then raise those separately, and just decrease the chances of any sort of mites popping up in any of those scenarios. And I did receive that other genus, so Oechioptema, either rugulosum or inequally. But I'm not quite as driven to set them up immediately, so I don't know if I'll actually put an extra effort to try and get them mite free. Because I also feel like if I have them around and I don't take these precautions with them to get the mites off of them, that the mites might one day find their way from the Oechioptema culture over to the Necrophila culture, and that would be problematic. Tennyson asks, if they're set up properly, how often do you have to maintain stuff in your Splendidus enclosure? Might set up a bin. My mom's would only get to maintain it monthly. That's more than enough maintenance for Splendidus and a lot of other millipedes if you go heavy on the quality substrate. I've been putting off doing millipede husbandry for like a month and a half or 2 months now with basically just watering them. But because when I set them up, I put so much organic matter in of such good quality, and then I add some extra food that usually sticks around for a while. That's really all I need to do is just water them every once in a while to get them to come up and do things if they aren't already doing a lot of stuff in the lower substrate layers. And with the humidity, since I think you're in a drier climate, so you could probably use less ventilation and they should be okay. Maybe a glass top or use some plastic wrap on a piece of cardboard to cover up most of the top of the enclosure. But since Splendidus are from Madagascar, if you give them some way to get down into the more humid layers of the substrate, even if it gets very dry at the surface, they will get further down and be able to be all right. And the millipede body shape, at least the spirobolids and other ones that are cylindrical, is pretty much prime adaptation for burrowing through a number of different solid media. You know, I noticed now I have this beard, I just want to sit here and like touch it. It might be a little distracting to other people. Oh boy, I need to go to Costco and get food. Quite a few things I need to do before I decide to staycation next week. Any other updates from stuff that's in here? I need to check my Parcoblata zebra buhl. There's an entomophagus fungus that popped up in there, and I need to. Hopefully, I have more than a handful, or have some that are still alive in there. They, I think I talked about them on a past live stream where I said they were doing very well, and they were. But they were also, there just never seemed to be as many as I thought there would be, given how many oots were being laid and the size gaining and whatnot. And so I think that this fungus may have had an impact on the younger individuals, and I just was not aware of it. The colony currently was restarted from one pair, so that I think could have also obscured my judgment before on how well they were doing. So I always have to go through them, pick out whatever I can. And, you know, Alan, if you're still here, I think some of those Parcoblata from the swamp with the palmettos and stuff might actually be zebra from the adults that I'm seeing. I know that some of them are definitely divisive, but actually I think some of them are zebra. So that might be an easy restart for a zebra colony. The other Parcoblata from Alabama are doing well. I have each locality, which is a mix of species at most localities, are doing pretty well. I've debated separating the ooths because some of the ooths are pretty distinctive, like Virginica versus Latta is pretty distinctive. So I've debated doing that, but it's also work that I have to do right now. So I don't know if I'm actually going to do it. I'll probably just wait until I get some nymphs that are a good size and then pull those since those are more distinctive. Caudal Eye is they were in weird shape. Like the colony was fine, but a lot of them were missing tarsi and antennae segments. And I was keeping them with Balta noculata. I don't think the noculata were chewing on them, but like they were in really weird shape. And I was like, are these even gonna like continue existing? Well, there were so many of them. There was like 30 or 40 or something like that. So I pulled them to their own enclosure and they all did stationary molts. And so they repaired all of their tarsi and antennae and they seem to be doing much better, but they don't seem to be getting ready to mature, which is really annoying because I want them to mature so they will reproduce. And giving further credence to their relationship with Parcoblatanotha, those do the same thing. It feels like you get all these subadults and they're just kind of in crappy shape, and then you get the trickle of adults, and then you get enough. You get a pretty big population. I just don't understand. I did move the Notha. They've been living with my Elliptorhina chopardi, and I did move all of those to a bigger enclosure. There's one rack in the basement that is oriented such that one of the support beams for the house goes right over the top of it and is very annoying because it means that instead of having 4 10-gallon tanks on that rack, I have to have 3 10-gallons and 5.5. Well, the Elliptorhina chopardi and Parcoblatanotha were in a 5.5, and nobody seems to keep Elliptorhina chopardi anymore. So at first I put them in the smaller tank thinking like, oh yeah, I'll just, have a nice little colony. I'll always have them available. And now I was like, maybe I should have more of these if there's even a chance that they could, sort of disappear or slip away from the mainstream cultivation. So I'm bumping them up to a 10, and of course it's very easy to justify for me because they're also sharing the enclosure with the Parcoblatanotha. So Notha. And so yeah, they're both in a 10-gallon now with some belly heat. And hopefully, I did find when I was moving everything, I did find some newborn Notha. A lot of the ooths were in sort of weird condition. Like some of them had some black marks on them and stuff that didn't look too healthy. And actually, I was kind of wondering if I was just going to lose the Notha after they had done well in with the chopardi. And so, so now I hopefully will get another generation of those cross-locality Notha because apparently they're the only Notha left in captivity. No malice intended, Alan. But now we're gonna have to keep working with the cross-locality strain until I go back to Arizona in August, and I'll be in Cave Creek long enough, and I'll be exploring enough stuff that I don't doubt that I would come across more Notha while I'm out there. Chain says I try to keep at least 2 cultures of everything just in case. I do that more with isopod species and projects I'm working on where I'll have a main colony or I'll throw them in with a roach. And then when they're doing well in there or when I get a phenotype that I'm really comfortable with, I'll pull some individuals, but I won't exterminate them from the main colony just in case because it has saved my butt a couple times with things to take that approach to culturing them. So that's why I'm very inclined to do it. Which, going off of that, instead of just freezing and pitching the old Parcoblatanotha Elliptorhina chopardi enclosure substrate, I rehydrated it. It was getting a little dry. It might explain some of the stuff on the ooths, the marks. and I rehydrated it and I threw it out in the garage. It's still, covered and secure and whatnot. But I figure I'll just go and pick through it in a couple of weeks and see if any more hatch, and if more no-thaw are hatching, I'll just keep pulling them out of there into the new main enclosure. So did I talk about Marulinella tricolor on the last thing? I feel like I did. I think those came in before the live stream last week. Tennyson says, I have personal colonies and breeding colonies now. Decided to start working towards selling a bit, so trying to culture things more focused towards numbers, separate from my display tanks. Yeah, I mean, you can propagate in good numbers out of display tanks too. It just matters on what you value in the aesthetics and whatnot. Currently, my Archimandrita tessellata colony is in the living room in a 20-gallon because I wanted to really give them the love and care that they deserve, because they're definitely they're among my top favorite roaches. I have to keep a constant mental checklist. I think it was Chris Snyder who went through and made a compendium of all the times to say, oh, this is my favorite. Oh, this is one of my favorites. Oh, this is one of my favorites. And I can at least consistently fall back on Eublabrus distanti being my favorite roach, followed by the Hemicthosaurus vittata as second. But those numbers will blur more over time as more species are cultured and whatnot. So anyways, yeah, so I have a hybrid display / primary colony of tessellata, and it works out quite well for me. Maybe I should really get another culture of them going. They're one of those roaches that was very common when I started keeping things, and now I don't necessarily shop around for roaches too much, because I know a handful of people that usually have things that I would want and I can contact, but they're not very easy to find in my experience right now. So it's good. It's a good idea for me to bulk up and always have them on hand. Personally love the cryo looks. I keep them cooler, just a personal preference. I feel like if they're just bodies on top of each other, yeah, it's not the best look. But I do like it when you have a congregation of them, such as under a large piece of bark or on top of a piece of bark or something, and then you've got your decor all around that they're less inclined to crawl on. Some eggs, you're saying nope, that I didn't talk about Marulinella tricolor last live stream, so I guess I should touch on that. So TJ claimed the bounty. He was able to find somebody who was able to sell me guaranteed captive bred Marulinella species tricolor. I was able to get 10 plus 1, so 11 of them. And so now I have them, and I had an enclosure set up and very rich. I went out in the compost and I sterilized a bunch of actively rotting compost and let it start rotting again. Mixed all kinds of special organic ingredients. And by organic, I don't mean like, oh, I mixed a combination of locally sourced chickpea protein with a little bit of morning wood, and then I added some vegan cuttlebone mixture for calcium. No, just literally just organic material, like rotting leaf litter and all this other stuff that I sourced from around the yard and create in my vats and whatnot. And they seem to have all molted at least once. That's a very good sign that they're able to molt in those conditions. They're not too wet or too dry, and also speaks to the fact that they were in good shape getting here. Of course, it was because I had my desire in sight, that coordinating with the seller, I was like, whatever gets them here, live arrival guaranteed, you ship them FedEx overnight to the hub, blah, blah, blah. So I had to drive out to the hub to pick them up as soon as they were available. But I feel pretty confident with them. Back around 2017 or 2018, before Marulinellas became the next chased after thing, I received some Marulinella bicoloratum, bicolor, whatever. Back during that time, I was supposed to receive a good number of them, and the seller, who is rather infamous, I will not say his name, but who is very infamous, sent me stuff and said, "Oh, they all died. I sent you the only ones that were left." And so I received two of them, and they were what I perceived to be about half grown, obviously wild caught. And I set them up as I would, as I do all my other isopods. That time I wasn't as focused on ventilation as I am now, but I was had some good results with whatever I was doing at the time with things like Silvestrii and not I never had success with succinctus, but there are a couple other species that were similar. I can't remember that I was keeping that I was having good results with these style of setups. Anyways, so these two Marulinellas that I received lived a good long time. They molted several times. They got to about the size of a small full grown Armadillidium vulgare, and I was like, "Oh boy, I'll get to see some babies. I'll have them before anybody else does. This is great. Oh boy, I can't wait." And then, I got curious and I flipped them both over to see if either of them had a full marsupial, and they were both males. And oh my gosh, I wish that there was a way that I could have just, pestered that guy and I mean, actually, I pestered him constantly because I really wanted them. So it was just one of those things with the stars. No matter what you do, would not have aligned, and it would have been very nice to have a colony going by this time. And that was also around the same time that I received my first rubber duckies. There was a person I haven't heard from them in a good while now, who won them in an auction for some ridiculous cost and had them sent to me. And I said, "Send them to me, and if I get a culture going, I'll send you back." I say double nowadays, but I can't remember what I said at that point. "I'll send you back X number, and if I fail with them, I'll pay you for them plus something, or send you some bugs or something like that." So it's a very good deal for them to have uncertainty about this and to be reassured that they would either get their money back or they would get more of the stock. And so that's how I got my first duckies. It was about 2017. Yeah, sounds about right. Summer of 2017. And those I just threw into a big communal with a bunch of stuff, some scaber and vulgari, and I remember finding the babies and just thinking like, "Oh boy," like I was so excited. And it's my duckies ever since. I haven't ever had to add to the colony or anything like that. And it is looking like it's gonna rain. I'm gonna check my phone's weather and see. No, there's no rain in the forecast. The temperature is just dropping suddenly, and it's getting very cloudy like it should rain, but there's no actual rain in the forecast. This is very unusual with Michigan weather, because I would see this and immediately think under with any other information that it would just start downpouring, even if it was a short downpour. I mean, I guess we could get hit with that. It wouldn't be the first time the forecasters have been wrong. So Shane says, "Speaking of Hemithorsassera vittata, how is their care compared to Paleata? My Paleata are doing amazing, and I'm hoping Vittata will do as good." Paleata are nearly indestructible. They will take all kinds of drought and poor conditions and whatnot, in my experience. Vittata are not as forgiving. If you keep them too moist, or if you keep the substrate too moist, you will not do well with them. If the air humidity is too high and there's not enough ventilation, they will do poorly. This setup right here, which I have a video of on the channel, you can find it. Just look for Hemithorsassera vittata. Might even be one of the only videos on YouTube if you type in the Latin name. But the setup that I've been using for the last year and a quarter now, has worked wonderfully, and I'm on my F2, and I have no worries that I'm gonna be able to maintain them in perpetuity. But a lot of people have had problems with either you get the adults and then you can't get the ooths to hatch, which is probably due to it being too dry and the ooths just completely drying out, or too wet and the ooths taking in too much water and dying. or succumbing to bacteria if it's too stagnant and whatnot. And with the newborns, like first through third ish instar nymphs, need very specific conditions. They're from a third instar to about adulthood. They're very resilient roaches, but there's a lot of room for error in between that. And it seems also that they are naturally inclined to reproduce in cohorts. So you will, and this might also be because when I go to sell things, I try not to send adults. So I will pick, the smaller individuals out to sell. And so that may leave me being top heavy in a group, but it does seem that there is some natural inclination to cohorts where you will get all your adults at once, and then the adults will sort of trickle off, and then you'll get a bunch of nymphs, and then you sort of repeat. So you won't have a gigantic mixed colony of a bunch of different sizes as you would with something like hissers. Speed Microtomus persis, there's similar difficulty. So Alan is the one to talk to here about Microtomus, because Alan probably the origin of that stock, unless somebody else is catching them in the wild. There's only two people I've ever known who've offered Microtomus persis for sale, and Alan's one of them. I am stubborn and will continuously try to find a way to raise Microtomus communally. I have a group from Alan currently, and I've gotten them from Alan many times, and there have been some times where it's just been a screw up because I kept them too moist without any ventilation. I didn't offer them the proper type of food, or I've tried to cram a bunch of nymphs together and they end up eating each other or dying. But Alan's consistent success for almost a decade has been keeping them individually and then pairing up adults. Or Alan, do you keep small groups of adults together? But the bottom line is that Microtomus persis is not as easy and straightforward as Platymeris or Satella. You will have problems if you try to feed them the same things and keep them the same way. And there seems to be something else about them. I feel like if we could find, I feel like if we could find a preferred prey item for them that you could keep in large numbers with them, that would solve a lot of problems. The first time that I did well with them, Alan sent me one female, and she had a bunch of babies, and I would do as I do with harvestmen and some other small predators, where I will flood the enclosure with fruit flies, and that worked very well, and I raised a lot of nymphs from that cohort. But I didn't keep up on it, and I kind of figured that they would always be available in some way, assuming that Alan would always go out and find more, which he can't always do now because the best trees for them were all cut down and a lot by one of his houses. So yeah, finding a prey item that works consistently for them at all sizes is, I think, the biggest hurdle, because they are kind of crappy at catching stuff. They will take Parcablata and Panchlora and Pycnoscelis and whatnot. Very easy to raise if you keep them singly. What Alan does is has a bunch of vials, and what I do now, because I have the stock from Alan, I'm raising them up that way. A bunch of vials with paper towel on one side, and then if you drop in a prey item and it's even a little bit wounded, I'll wound stuff just because I really want them to do well, because I don't want to have Alan go out and find more. But you drop it in, they're in close quarters with it, they're oriented vertically, so they'll go after it, and they have a pretty good success rate and not many problems that way. But that's also very time consuming and not what I would consider ideal, but I'm putting up with it because I need to get an F1 so I can experiment. So they're definitely not as easy as Platymeris and Satella. Even the habitat seems to be different because they're found under the bark of still standing trees that are usually vertical trees. And so the few images I've seen of Satella and Platymeris in the wild, they seem to be kind of just generalist hunters on fence posts, on living trees in tree hollows and whatnot, whereas Microtomus persis seems to be more of a habitat specialist on trees with that are still standing with their bark attached to them. So they probably have a suite of morphological adaptations and maybe behavioral adaptations that allow them to catch prey while being oriented vertically underneath bark. So that's my 2 cents. If you want another easy to keep assassin, the Zealous genus is an excellent option to look into. Very easy to keep. You can keep them communally. The adults will even eat fruit flies, and so will the newborns. So it's very easy to keep them communally and in large numbers if you just constantly have fruit flies in the enclosure. Sphodoptera. I'm gonna have to small up Sphodoptera. You could probably raise You could probably raise Aurelius very easily on readily reared caterpillars. Thank you, Alex. I would like to know that information because if it's very easy to do year round, I would love to look into. And it's raining. It's not full on raining, but it's like they're big water droplets. It's actually quite pretty because I can see the sun peeking through the clouds still, and there's a bunch of rain. It's not heavy rain, but I knew it. I knew it was going to rain. I saw those clouds, and I thought there's no way it couldn't rain with clouds like that and this temperature drop. So, anyways, discussion of individuals aside, which I will leave to the chat. They're Zealous. Zealous are very easy to raise. I had the white striped leg ones from southern Florida. And actually, Alan, if you're here, could you maybe collect some more of those white stripe-legged Zealous longipes for me while you're in Florida, please? I would greatly appreciate that. I lost them because was that last year? Yeah, last year. I lost them because I started doing the landscaping work again, and I didn't keep up on keeping fruit flies in with them. But they're so ridiculously easy. In fact, I was using 32-ounce cups to raise them before, the same size you keep a fruit fly culture in. And you know what I'm going to do now? I'm going to use just a mesh pop-up cage, and I'm just going to have a boatload of them in there. Like I was doing something like, oh, I'll raise a cohort in here, and then when they get too big, I'll move them to this other 32-ounce. And now the rain's really come down. It's really big raindrops. I'm surprised Victor hasn't wanted to come in. But anyways, so that's what I'm going to do now is I'll just raise them in a big old mesh cube, and I'll do that with Zealous Lyridus too, which I'm actually surprised I haven't seen any Zealous Lyridus in my front yard. Last year, I felt like every other day I was seeing them, and I was like, oh, I won't grab this to culture this. There'll be more. Oh, I won't grab that. Oh, here's another one a few days. I won't grab that. I'll grab in a couple days. I'm not going to find more than like 3. I'm not going to find more than 5. And it just kept going on all year, and then I just lost the opportunity. But this is the prime time of year to find them. So, I'm supposed to go collecting on Sunday. So maybe Will and I could sweep net something up, or Brandon and I could sweep net something up. Brandon Thomas. Oh yeah, it's really coming down. Big chunky raindrops. Very pretty. Good for all my plants. So anyways, Zealous Lyridus, Zealous longipes, etc. Very easy to keep. Very straightforward assassin bugs. So Alan finds it funny we were talking about Microtomus because feeding them today. I need to feed them too, actually. I have an expo on Saturday, and I have quite a few orders going out on Tuesday. And then I go on my vacation, my staycation, where I will basically put down the bulk of the bug work and just do a little bit of maintenance stuff in between working on outside, spending some time with a special somebody, and what have you. But I do need to feed my Microtomus. Fortunately, they also don't eat much, so like you can let them go a month without food in those vial setups. But that's the other thing, is when you have them communally, somebody gets hungry, somebody else isn't hungry. That's what can happen in those sort of situations. So I'll likely do actually is what I'll do actually is uh, set up a. I'll have a main culture for experimenting with the communal microtomus, and then I'll probably do the same thing that Alan does, because I have a bunch of extra vials just laying around. I'll probably set up a group of maybe 20 or so in vials, and then just suffer through feeding them individually when they get past fruit fly size, just so that I have them on hand. But yeah, it's a beautiful assassin. It is an absolutely beautiful assassin bug. It's one of those things where it's a very much so a gem of North America, and yeah, that's about it. You don't have any platymeris or Citalihord is a monotypic genus, but you don't have any platymeris that have that huge splotch of white on the wings and all the other pretty body color highlights. Alan, speaking of assassin bugs, I owe you some Reduvius perfonatus, and I haven't seen any this year. Usually June is the month to find them, and usually I see a couple in the garage. I'll see them on the side of the house at the light at night, but I haven't seen them yet. And I think that the hot, cold weather we've been having has been messing with a lot of stuff. Like we basically went from winter to spring in like 3 weeks, if not less than that here. It's actually so messed up. I'm trying to think of something that's starting to bloom now, or something that bloomed before that wasn't supposed to. I guess I'm looking out the front window to see if there's anything that's weirdly timed right now. But it is strange, because some things are already 4 feet high, like the dog bane's already 4 feet high, and then some other things are just sort of like barely waking up, like hibiscus is. I guess hibiscus wakes up pretty quickly too, but it's very weird, because all the trees and bushes are like fully leafed out, which is something that usually doesn't happen until the end of May in the last couple of years here. And then here by the middle of May, because of how warm it got, everything just leafed out suddenly. Orange assassin bugs, says some eggs. Anybody kept Coleopus barbari? Alan would be the one to talk to about that. I know we've seen those before. Tennyson, Alan is the person to talk to about any of these cool native assassin bugs, because he has worked with or tried to work with most of them or many of them. I guess most of the really cool ones over the last couple of years. So, oh yeah, there we go. Rain's letting up, and oh gosh, it's so pretty out there right now. So, I think I found a member of that genus, the Coleopus, outside last year. Actually, if I recall, there may have been one in the prairie out front last year. It was not an aesthetic species. It was brown or black, I think. But I think Will and I both took a second and were like, "What?" And then there was another interesting. I guess this is turning into the assassin bug stream. There was another pretty one that Will and I came across. It was on some scarlet or biennial Gora last year. So I manage a couple of plantings on the block for neighbors. And the biggest one is my neighbor Karen's, and every year she just sort of sees how things have progressed and says like, "Oh, I don't think I want as much lawn here. Let's do another bed over here," which I love, because it's more native stuff and it's beautiful. And so we did a seed mix from Prairie Moon Nursery. It was like the quick and easy, and then there was also a shortgrass echinacea mix. And so I threw that out on her bare, dry, sandy soil, and it's looking absolutely beautiful. It looked beautiful last year and the year before, but she's decided that the big area of lawn that we were going to make out of different Bootaloo, different warm season native grasses, because she was unable to grow an actual lawn there. So she decided that she doesn't actually care if it's just the native grasses there now. She's fine with all the stuff from the other smaller beds around that we put seeds down in. She's fine with it all flooding over into there, basically turning it into another gigantic wildflower bed, which is awesome. And because it's mostly exposed sand and it's very easy to access, I can manage it differently than the beds on the fringes, which have a lot more leaf litter and they're near fencing and stuff like that. So I can go in on this one area that's mostly the bare sand that's doing wonderful, and I can just burn it to the ground. I can just take the flame weeder and just torch spots to the bare sand in the springtime, and that will open up. That'll make holes and patches for these annual wildflowers to move in and really, really pump some color into these spots very easily. I can't do that in these other areas where the leaf litter is starting to accumulate, where I have to be very careful with it because one, I don't want to overstress the perennials that are there, and two, I don't want the leaf litter to catch on fire uncontrollably. So I have to be very judicious with where I use that there and what time of year. I brain flicking in and out of ideas. I think I saw hi, Liz. Good to see you. I saw you back there, and I was going to say hi, but I was entrenched in my discussion. I should just nope. That's too bright. The sun is coming back out. Alan started working with human dwarf whips. Yes. Hello, Chris. I talked about you earlier. Actually, you'll have to watch the live stream from the beginning because I can't remember what I was talking about. A flame weeder is basically a modified blowtorch on the end of a propane tank. It's specifically called a flame weeder attachment. You just hook it up to a regular propane tank or anything that has that sort of adapter. And the idea is that you use it to, you've got weeds coming out of your concrete driveway cracks, or you've got weeds among your other plants. The idea is that if you are a skilled and conscientious gardener and you don't want to just blast herbicide everywhere, that you can use it to torch and kill weeds that are coming up in those inconvenient places. And the advantage is, if you're bad with the herbicide, you get it on plants that you don't want to kill, you can still kill them. If you hit a plant with the flame weeder that you don't want to kill, there's a very high chance that it's not going to care. That part of the plant will to die, but you're not going to systematically kill the plant. Whoa, the sun really came back out. Holy crap, it was very beautiful out front. So I'm just going to put that all the way down for now. Lawn dragon. That's an interesting name for those. Connects up to a 20-pound propane tank. Regulated. So some of these things you just have to be aware of the nomenclature for stuff. So if you're in a state in a city within that state that regulates prescribed burns or prescribed fire usage, you can use it as a flame weeder, because when you're utilizing it as a flame weeder, you're not starting or setting an uncontrolled fire or anything of that sort. So when you're using it as directed to hit weeds here and there, if somebody asks what you're doing, you say you're using the flame weeder. You're pretty much set, I think, anywhere unless they have specific ordinances or whatnot about fire use of any sort. In Michigan, it was determined by the Department of Natural Resources, and I guess that there's a legal precedent for this as well, that local governments do not have the authority to restrict prescribed burns on private land. So if you have a wildflower garden or you have a patch of land that you want to use fire to manage in a prescribed measure, and usually I think that there's also some other things about like there you have to do it a specific way. There are certain guidelines and whatnot that you're supposed to follow at a state level for this. But basically, that your local government cannot stop you from performing prescribed burns on your private property if these protocol are followed, which is actually pretty huge. Um, my one neighbor on the one side who's lived here for a while, and the one that him and I have our disagreements, our silent disagreements, used to tell me that when this area was more agricultural, it's still zoned for agriculture, but of course nobody really cares about that except for the hippies such as myself and a bunch of other people on the block who actually use our land for what it's meant for. Um, that across the street, the family there had an orchard, and that every spring they would set the grass underneath the trees on fire. And he said, "Oh, it would just grow back just perfectly fine after that." So in this area, there's a history of, specifically in this neighborhood, there's a history of usage of fire for more agricultural purposes. But the Department of Natural Resources doesn't care if it's for agricultural reasons. It's at the discretion of the landowner, which would be me in this case, or Karen in that case. Regulator for the. I ran off on a tangent there. I didn't know you meant a regulator for the actual flame weeder itself. Yes, it has. There's a regulator for how much propane you let out at any given time, and then there's also a handle that you squeeze to put to let out more of it and increase the intensity of the flame. And so I've used it sparingly around my yard because I don't really have a lot of stuff that needs to be burned from a weed perspective, because a lot of the stuff that's in my yard that's weedy, that I don't want there, I'll just pull it, because most of the spots it's coming up are beds that I haven't started or don't manage anyways. So I'll just pull it, or I'll cut it or pull it and just feed it to the animals. So it's kind of justified in that sense. So um some things you did mean government regulation. So yeah, it's in Michigan again, by state, at the state level, you have many granted, you are enabled many rights at the state level, and because of legal precedent, blah blah blah. That means that and because it explicitly says so as well, that means that your local rights at a city or township or whatever level are also well preserved. You'd be surprised how much stuff you can, by the letter of the law, get away with being zoned for agriculture. And there are some of my rights which I have not flexed because I don't want to cause any issues and whatnot, but they're written right into things. So you can tell those are good people because they farm with fire. So, but the other thing is, other things to take into consideration with fire is, what sort of soil's exposed. If it's mineral soil where it's not combustible, it's a lot safer to use fire, because you don't run the risk of lighting leaf litter and wood and whatnot on fire. And also the type of vegetation that you're burning, twigs and wood and things like that, can very easily get out of control quickly because of the temperature that they burn at and the way that they sustain flame. Things like grasses have adapted to basically go up there, or there are a lot of grasses in the eastern United States that are adapted to quickly go up into flame and then be done with it. And that fire just runs very quickly and sweeps through an area. The temperature doesn't get too high, and it doesn't stick around, and it doesn't continue going. It doesn't sustain for long. So again, her front yard is a perfect place for this because with that other type of vegetation, with the access off the driveway, with the mostly exposed sand, mineral soil at the surface, and without the leaf litter and twigs and whatnot there, the fire can be ran very quickly and very safely under a variety of conditions. But I will again just be primarily using it just to torch a couple of spots to keep perennials back and to clear the ground for annuals to pop up and do well. So I'm trying to think if there's so there we go. We've gotten a couple of interesting topics from assassin bugs to land management. Grass is too well adapted. I've gone into hour-long rants over grass. Yeah, grass is an interesting creature. And it's actually, I've been so surprised over the last couple of years at how little many plants care about being burned to the ground, even when they're alive and well. Last spring, I used the flame weeder. I did it again this spring, but not as much. But last spring, I was using this flame weeder in my front yard area to there's a lot of the prairie zone. I still want to accumulate more organic matter into the soil, just so that it has better moisture retention properties and blah blah blah. It's just my little preference and quirk with this area of the yard, because it was mostly sand. It used to be lawn, very crappy lawn at that. So, so in that area, I didn't want to use the flame weeder to hit the bulk of the prairie, but there's a section of Sporobolus heterolepis, prairie dropseed, which is a very fire-adapted prairie grass. I think it might actually be an at-risk species in Michigan too. You look that up. Or a very conserved species from only very high-quality habitats. It's a species of special concern that's only found in very high-quality habitats, at least naturally. So I have this section of Sporobolus along the one neighbor side of the prairie to act as sort of a boundary between his lawn and the prairie. And my logic behind this was, to have a border there, it looks nicer. Or have something definitive as sort of a border there, it kind of looks nicer. And that also, whenever he uses some sort of herbicide that's going to target broadleaf things, while throwing it down just very half-assedly on the lawn, it's not going to kill the grass because the grass is already adapted to it's a grass. It uses a different pathway than broadleaf things, so it'll be fine along there. And so I went there and I torched all the patches of it this year, but the year prior I did that too. My friend Joe from down the block was with me, and Joe also has a lot of native plants on his landscaping and uses the flame. We share the flame weeder basically, and I have what is that? It's a member of the mallow family. It's a Kankakee mallow, Malva something, Iliamna remota. So I have one of those there. It's not named to Michigan, but it's named to the Midwest. The genus is named to the Midwest. And so I started one from seed, and I put it in that corner. The deer just mow that thing down. It must be just the tastiest thing to them. There's nothing I can do to stop them at the moment. But it's there, and I can take a division of it or something when I move, etc. Anyways, so it was starting to come up. There was a lot of green growth. It looked very happy and healthy, and this was, in early spring. And I had torched all this Sporobolus, and Joe was looking for things to light on fire. And or maybe it was Will. I don't know who to point the finger at here. It was either Will or Joe. But one of them went over to it, and I was like, don't burn the Kankakee mallow. Don't burn that, please. It's already coming up. All I had to do is cut back the stems. I don't have to burn it. And he just looked at me like, oops, I already burnt it. So I had this beautiful crown of green coming up, and it just got torched to the ground. And in that moment, I wanted to strangle one of them, whoever it was. But then I also sort of figured, like, yeah, okay, there's some notes on it being a fire adapted species and them actually using fire to manage invasives where it's found. But I justified it in the moment. I figured it's nothing worth getting upset over. So fast forward a couple of weeks, and I thought, oh, yeah, this thing's definitely dead. And then it just exploded. It just like came up out of nowhere. There were so many dormant growth buds underneath under the soil that it just exploded. There was more of it after the burn than there was before. Um, so anyway, so yeah, that's fire adaptation. I just couldn't believe how little that thing cared about being burnt to the ground, basically, and not even while it was dormant, while it was actively growing, it didn't care. So let me go back here and look at some of the comments. Somebody had a couple of comments or questions. Tennyson asks, what happened to C. pygmea? Saw them at one point, but don't see them anymore. Whether roly-poly roaches. It is Pyrospherus pygmaeus is the current proper Latin for it. You can watch TJ, aka Invertebrate Dudes, Pyrospherinae rap, correct? Pyrospherinae taxonomy nomenclature rap from a couple of years ago. But they just don't seem to be an easy species. I used to have a good colony of them going for years when I put them up on the site, maybe for 2-3 years. And I've had them once since that initial collapse, and they seem to be doing okay, and then they collapsed again. And so currently I don't have Pygmaeus, but TJ was kind enough to send me some Pyrospherus punctatus, which seem so much hardier and so much more flexible so far. While on that note, I do have some bad news. The Pseudoglomerus tarsalis, which I received a couple, I think like a dozen or 15. Most of them were males except for 3. I had 3 females. And during the time that I was taking care of my parents and whatnot, I wasn't able to do I wasn't able to do my day in, day out husbandry here because I was exhausted, not in the house much. They seem to have dried out despite it being summer and the air humidity being higher here. Although also one of all the males died, which I would have expected of age anyways. Perhaps I don't have enough experience with the species to say if they're exceptionally long lived. I think TJ said they can live a fair amount of time, but 2 of the adult females died. One of them looked like there was a fungus rupturing from the abdomen, which I thought was very strange, although it could have infected the carcass after it died. So I'm down to 1 female, and she has to be gravid. I don't think TJs are doing very well. And I'm not sure if Ty Randall, I'll have to ask Ty how he prefers his last name. So Ty's I don't think are doing the best either, which is interesting because my Magnifica are doing very well still. I'm still waiting on another big baby boom. I had a couple more babies trickle into existence, but nothing like the initial sort of gush. So it makes me just a little bit nervous. Like maybe I shouldn't have sold so many, but I'll just have to sit on my hands and be patient and keep taking care of them. So that's some unfortunate news. So I wrote that little blog article on how much I love the fact that the tarsalis have the golden tarsi and the palpens and whatnot and Cherokee. So, but the punctatus are doing well. I think TJs are still doing well. I know that TJ is constantly working with new Perispherean roaches, so I'm not too concerned. But it is a bit of a bummer when you think something's doing well and then it just, even worse so when it was kind of preventable. So anyways, Tennyson, expect to see Perispherus punctatus more or sooner than you see Pygmaeus available, I would say, in the U.S. T-Bear T2, how do you know when a Regius has reached its adult size? In the males, the proportions get very weird. Like the body seems so small compared to the thickness and length of the legs. In the females, it seems a bit trickier, but I think the ratio of the head to the abdomen becomes a bit more your cephalothorax of the abdomen gets so that the cephalothorax is larger or is bigger than before. Basically, it seems like the immatures have a much larger abdomen when after they finish eating than even a gravid adult female will have. So the ratio of cephalothorax to body goes up, more 1-to-1 and less 1-to-3, I guess is the best. It's more of a 1-to-1-ish, and it goes from like 1-to-2 head to or cephalothorax to abdomen to more like, or it goes from, I'm getting so mixed up. It goes from like a 1-to-4 cephalothorax to abdomen to like a 1-to-2 cephalothorax to abdomen, if that makes sense. Alan says, speaking of grass, I'm thinking of getting a large bin, fill it up with grass clippings and water, let it rot till it turns dark, and then use for Aranavega. Yeah, I guess that could work. Actually, and this is something I have to put on my revised cockroach care guide whenever I get around to doing it, which I think I'm going to do this fall, or if not, at some point over the summer. I'll probably have more time in October after I get all the house stuff fixed up and actually work on getting the house on the market. I've been using sand with the Aranavega, not full sand, but like 50-50 sand coconut coir. And I've been having good success. The only problem is how quickly sand can dry out and go from being habitable to being deadly. So, but the Floridensis are in pretty heavy sand mixes currently, and they're thriving. But they also have such a good variety of microclimates to pick from in those enclosures too. Although they're usually in the dry section. But I know that when I've kept them completely dry before, that they've just dried out and died. So they must be able to find just the perfect sweet spot in there. Of course, they can move around unhindered in those size enclosures. Hyla says, any advice for bug collection trips going down through Oregon and California this summer and again in the fall? Hyla's try and find some sand roaches. We need some sand roaches from California so bad. It's so... I've gone over the curse of California Aranavega, but it would be nice to break this. And Alan and Kai are going to California too, so I'm hoping out of all these folks that somebody can get a good group of the California Aranavega. Just don't be afraid to look in odd places. Rest stations can be your friend. Trash-filled lots can be your friend. You just have to go into it with an open mind and be ready to poke around in places. Don't assume because an area looks like it's very urbanized or suburbanized that it's not going to have anything, or that an area is just completely void of stuff. And looking at night's also very helpful too, especially during the summertime. Going out looking at places at night with a headlamp would be very productive. I know you'll find darkling beetles galore, at least. And Some Eggs offers some good practical advice. Collect ethically and be aware of what land you're on. Probably very important in California for that. Although I don't think it doesn't have nearly as much privatized land as like Texas does. So an ethical collection, it also depends on what you're collecting. I don't think you can unethically collect Eleodes in California, although it also depends on the species and perhaps where you're at. Because of crowding, convert them highless, force them into liking bugs. Hand out hissers like candy, you'll find bug friends and maybe get a lot of strange looks. Some eggs, yes, it's an inactive toxin though. Tennyson says, do you know anyone who sells a quality and affordable millipede substrate? Would really like to get some if possible for sure. Denison, if you go on my supplies and what is my page even called? For sale supplies and substrate page, you will find some millipede substrate for sale. I don't have white rot wood for millipedes, beta larvae, and isopods. For a fair number of millipedes right now, I'm using just straight up this white rot wood that I make for raising them. Churchyards can be good in my experience. Rest stations are the best. Yeah, that's all very good advice. Chris Snyder, I thought sand was bad for any roaches. I've gone over some of the pros and cons of sand on my care guide and have said explicitly not to use sand for Aranavega. And now I have to eat my words now that I have more experience. But I will stand behind the fact that it is very difficult to regulate the humidity of sand, especially in small enclosures, because you can go from being way too moist to way too dry very quickly. And despite being sand roaches, Aranavega and even Eremoblata are not as dry tolerant when just out, out in a container, in like a bare container or something like that. There's something like Blaptica dubia. Dubia might have the highest or larger hissers too. Those they may have some of the highest drought tolerance of all roaches, especially dubias. Like I've tried to look them up on iNaturals to see what their wild habitats are, and they look like they come from temperate places, that dry wood, dry bark, and temperate places. And that's kind of a tough environment for a lot of things. Might also explain why dubias have become a popular feeder, is because they take more abuse than any other roach species. So, people are inclined to keep them very dry with water crystals, and that's kind of a filter for keeping things in terms of who's going to keep them, or rather the widespread appeal or accessibility to keeping them. People keep a species a couple of times and they fail with it, and they don't realize they're keeping them too dry, and they get something else, they have some marginal success, they're going to be more likely to go with the thing that didn't just dry out and die on them. I hate dubious. They're definitely an interesting roach for sure, and especially their sort of history and climb to fame as a feeder. I really think a lot of it can be boiled down to the fact that they're so dry tolerant that the conditions that will kill a lot of other roaches, or that will severely impact their vigor, dubias are still able to, even if so sparingly, reproduce in. So nobody's had long-term success with Megaloblata. I've discussed with some people who've kept them before what the issue may have been, and it seems that their ooths may be very, 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 very intolerant of drying out. So so even if they seem like they're quite moist, they may not actually be moist enough to prevent the eggs within from drying out. And if I recall, they're mostly found in tropical areas, and the ooths are likely laid in tree hollows that accumulate a lot of water, may not have a lot of airflow and whatnot. TJ says that the Russians have been breeding Megaloblata for 2 generations now. TJ, do you happen to know if some of that success is due to improvements in keeping the ooths? Because I believe that's what somebody on Roach Forum was having issues with. 12 to 14 months to hatch. Yeah, that'll put a lot of people off, I think. A 12 to 14 month incubation. So some eggs, I actually have the sticky note from when you first brought up cornflakes. I still have it up here. I wanna get a picture of them in a bowl and then see if it really radiates that sort of energy to me of cornflakes. Pardon me. I just sort of keep putting it off. I do have to check on them tonight or tomorrow as I go through and do combination husbandry and expo packing. And I'm going to try to, within the next 28 hours, go through every single invertebrate culture that I have, excuse me again, and do thorough husbandry on everything in preparation for my staycation. TJ says that the megaloblastras need to be kept humid and warm during the entire incubation. That rearing seems relatively simple for a tropical roach. If I recall, some of the places that they inhabit get quite cold at night. So, although in a safe place like an insulated tree hollow or a hole in a tree or something like that, where you're surrounded by wood and moisture, probably less likely to experience temperature swings than something that's just out and about, like where the adults or nymphs might be. So that would be neat if we could one day have those propagated here. Along with Archibald, I still hate myself for letting the babies that I produced desiccate, but 2018 was a bad time. 2018 was a very bad time. So yeah, hopefully maybe some paratropies may one day pop up in culture. That's another species that I would really like to work with one day. So, but for now we have hemitestosterone and a bunch of other really nice things. So we should be thankful for what we have going. We're at about an hour and 16 minutes, and I think I feel pretty comfortable wrapping up. We've had some interesting and unique discussions here today. And some topics we haven't really touched on before. Unofficially, the assassin bug stream, I guess. Oh boy, a year for paratropies ooths to hatch does not sound fun though. So, stenodontes. What does that sound familiar? Kai and Alan are, I think, collected some stenodontes. And I guess their husbandry is pretty easy, but yes, he does. So if Kai gets some ova out of them, I will probably try my hand at them. But as of right now, preanids are not on the top of my priority list for things. So, but again, if Kai gets some eggs or some first instar larvae, I would love to give them a go. They seem quite straightforward, but I don't have to bother with some wild caught ones. I would want to raise up a group of them. That would be the thrill for me. So, all right. So, with that being said, I need some hydration and some food. This has been a lovely live stream, everybody. I look forward to seeing hopefully everybody again next week, Thursday. And for those who weren't here at, I think, the beginning of the stream, I will be on a staycation from the 17th to about the 24th. So we will not have a live stream on June 23rd, but there will be a live stream next week. I've already set it up. So take care, everyone. Oh, just in time, Victor starts asking for my attention. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Enjoy the delightful, it's basically summer weather. And until next week, may your cultures be ever bountiful.